Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, Rutherford Motor City Madmouth. I know there are dream teams out there with professional teams, but I got mine here with Lou Landers and Eric Katz. Lou Landers, what can I tell you, Lou? You've been off a couple of weeks, but boy, I'm glad you came on sooner than later. I know you had a couple things to do, so I know you're really fresh and ready to inform a lot of people, aren't you, Mr. Landers?
Yeah, I sure am. We got a good show here. We're going to talk about the chase for 700, the wild card races, some struggling teams out there, some impending shortstop free agents, a crazy good shortstop free agent class this coming off season. So really good stuff here tonight. How you doing, Eric? What's going on?
I'm doing well, Luke. Good to be back.
Scott, what do you got here?
Well, I got right now is Eric Katz did a heck of a job the last couple of weeks. I threw him in a lot of interesting situations, and this guy here, since it is a baseball show, hit a grand slam with his efforts. Very proud of what he did. So what do I have here? Well, folks, I have a 4-digit number that you can play in the state lottery, and if you win, I don't want to know anything about it. So you're wondering, all right, am I getting lottery advice here from this guy? Bring it on, baby. Well, all right. The Oakland A's attendance versus the Miami Marlins yesterday was 2,630 fans. It's the first time Miami's been in Oakland since 2017. And the interesting part about these two franchises is the Miami Marlins have won 2 world titles. The A's have won 9 World Series titles. Their first one occurred in 1910 when they were the Philadelphia A's. And the last one was in 1989 when they were the Oakland A's. So just to give you a little bit of a history of the A's franchise, they were in Philadelphia from 1901 to 1954, Kansas City 1955 to 1967, and Oakland 1968 to present. And Las Vegas, anybody? I don't know. Those are some pretty interesting numbers, L Square.
When you are getting, 2,600 fans in the stands, I would say moving to Las Vegas is probably a good idea, Scott.
Yeah, but you know what? 2,630. And I got a teaser that we're going to mention later. So, folks, stick around. I can tell you where that 2,630 fans will equal 50% of another place. Okay, then I'm going to
feel like that's lots of places, though. There's tons of stadiums out there with 4,500, 5,500 seats.
Well, it's funny now you mentioned that, Lou, because I think in Williamsport, didn't they have their ball field out there for the Major League Classic at over 2,000 people in it? So that would be a sellout over Williamsport. But I'm going to make reference to the other teaser I had that'll give everybody that's subscribing to the channel something to look forward to. So I don't want to kind of let that one. All right, Eric. Okay, we know that you're Mr. Concrete Dump because you don't like where the Montreal Expos played, but give me your interpretation of 2,630 at the Oakland Coliseum. And before you do that, though, I was at the Oakland Coliseum many years ago when I covered the Lions and the Oakland Raiders. No, folks, this wasn't the Miami Dolphins and this wasn't the Miami Dolphins, okay, and the Oakland Raiders. This was the Miami Marlins and the Oakland A's. Get used to that. It's a little bit of a brain teaser. All right, Eric.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure how you can call yourself a Major League Baseball team with those kinds of numbers. I feel like that's pretty close to a rookie level team right there. I mean,
right.
The stadium's been falling apart for a long time. The city of Oakland hasn't done anything for any of its sports teams, hence why a couple of them already skipped town. You might as well move to Vegas. You'll make more money. It's proven that professional sports work there. Their minor league baseball teams draw very well there. And I just think that it's time to, with the non-traditional sports being as successful as they are, as well as obviously the Raiders in Las Vegas, you might as well move. Major League Baseball will support you.
Or enough of me.
They sure will. I was at a Mexican League baseball game a few weeks ago, and not only was the stadium so much nicer than that of the Oakland Coliseum, but they had probably 3,500, 4,000 fans in the stands. I mean, if you can't get even 8,000 to 12,000 fans to your ball games, and that's not asking very much, you have a serious problem, not just with your stadium, like I know they do in Tampa, but with people just caring. I mean, I know the A's sold off all their pieces. They're expected to be a horrible team, and they are, but you'd think there'd be enough baseball fans to get 8 to 10,000 people there. I know Miami's not the biggest draw themselves, but come on. I mean, that's really, really weak in August where there's still no football, there's no hockey, there's no basketball. What other major sport is really happening right now that you can't go to a baseball game on a Monday night?
Yeah, good point. And when I was at the last Marlins game I was at, against ironically the San Diego Padres, they had over 7,000 in that game. So,
well, that's probably around triple what the A's drew. So, you know what? Kudos to the Marlins.
I was about to say, so does that mean I have to bring out the GMTA with you again, Mr. Landers, again?
Probably. But let's get into some fun stuff here. Tonight's show is titled The Chase for 700. And if you're a baseball fan, you probably know why. But Albert Pujols, the chase for 700 home runs. This guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer, won the Rookie of the Year, 3-time MVP, 2-time world champion, 10-time All-Star, sitting at 693 home runs. He's 5 away from topping Alex Rodriguez, but really it's all about that 700 number. You want that beautiful even number. You don't want to retire at 697, 698, 699. And he's already said no matter what, this is his final year. So even if he gets to 697, 698, he says, I'm not coming back. And I believe him. Needs the 7 more. He has 14 homers on the season, but he has 6 since August 14th. So prior to August 14th, he had just 8. It would seem impossible for him to get 7, but considering he's gone 6 in about 10 days or so, give or take, more like 8 days, anything's possible this time. More than enough for him to get 7, especially if they start giving him regular playing time. For a while, he was just platooning against lefties, but if he continues to hit as well as he has, he's going to get more time to play. Of course, Cardinals can't just throw him out there for the sake of it either. If he stops hitting, they are in a race in the NL Central. So it'll be interesting to see how they do, if they can pull away from the Brewers, get him more playing time, or if he just continues to rake. Because if he continues on the pace he's on now, 700, well within reach.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right now, and I'll make my comments as brief as I'm capable of making them, okay? Number one, I think he's going to get it. Or I do know, I believe in my mind he's going to get it. 7 away. My goodness. Playing every day. And it doesn't hurt that you have the designated hitter either, so you can get him in the lineup one way or the other. Pujols has a track record. When he goes ahead and hits him, he can hit him in bunches. So that's another thing. And I remember years ago when I was at Lakeland over at Marchant Stadium, I interviewed Tigers Hall of Famer Al Kaline, who once told me that he regretted not being able to hit that final home run, which would have given him 400 and 3,000 hits instead of 399 and 3,000 hits. So I'm not betting against Albert Pujols. I don't bet much, but I'm not betting against him. No way. I do believe he's going to get it.
I hope he does, definitely. Eric, your thoughts on Pujols, man? I mean, again, the 14 homers on the season, you think, all right, he's probably not going to do it. But when you look at the 6 of those 14 coming in the last 8-9 days, certainly strong possibility now.
And you have to keep in mind, too, a couple of those games, they were multi-home run games, too. This wasn't just, 1 home run and done. This was like a 1 home run, 2 home run game. But, I really think he can do it because he's in his final year. He's a product at this point for the Cardinals. He's just there at this point. I think it's safe to say the Cardinals will be winning the NL Central, so they'll have every reason in the world to continue to play him, especially because this is his last run and we're toward the second half of the year. Because Pujols has said, "I'm done, no matter what happens." I really want him to hit it. I mean, 700 home runs. I mean, when was the last time we saw 700 home runs clean?
Yeah, right. I was about to say legitimately, but that's clean too.
But cool. Yeah, I mean, when will the next time be? It'll be a while. I mean, as long as like a couple other guys stay healthy, they got an opportunity. But but the fact of the matter is, this is like we haven't seen this in a really long time. And
gosh, Eric, I'm not so sure. Lou, and you can tell me what you think too. I'm not so sure we're going to see 700 for a while, if it ever at all.
I mean, the only guys I can see having a chance at it, Mike Trout, if he stays healthy, right. And obviously Juan Soto, but he's going to have a major bounce back year next year.
Right.
So, but other than that, this is a once in a lifetime deal. He's in the final year. But the fans are going to the ballpark specifically to see him because they know it's his last time out. And nothing would be more fitting for a Hall of Fame career if he hits number 700. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's got his World Series. He has multiple MVPs. God knows how many All-Star games. And 700 would just be the cherry on top to a legendary career.
It certainly would be. Honestly, Trout is a long shot at this point. Bryce Harper has a better chance, in my opinion, than he does. Giancarlo Stanton, to me, is the guy. He just can't stay healthy either. But if he puts up 10 more seasons, he's got a chance.
I don't think Stanton, if he stays healthy, I mean, that's been his biggest problem for a long time, which is he can't stay healthy. When he's on the field, the guy's a freaking animal. But when but the problem is he gets hurt. But the fact remains, though, that
there's no one even over 400 right now that's active other than Nelson Cruz, and he's like 40 something years old, right?
Yeah, Nelson Cruz is going on forever at this point. I mean, at this point, he's got to be nearing the end any day now. Any day now, his bat's just going to die, and then they're going to DFA him.
Yeah. So I mean, even Stanton's 32 years old. That is probably very unlikely.
Even Judge, I don't think we'll get it.
No, he's too old. As well, he started too late in his career. It's very unlikely any of these current guys are going to get it unless they're 25 or younger, like a Juan Soto type. That's the only guy that might have a chance, but he's going to have a couple 40 to 50 home run seasons in there if he wants any opportunity.
Because Juan Soto has.
I'm sorry, Eric. The only thing I'll say about it is by the time somebody hits 700 home runs, there's a good chance I'll be in heaven announcing with Ernie Harwell, Tigers legendary announcer.
Which I think Juan Soto is probably the one who has the chance, because prior to this year, I mean, let's be honest, he was on a crappy team for all of this year where no one got on base, and he's literally their offense except for maybe a sprinkle of Josh Bell. But since he's on the Padres and those guys can hit, that team is offensively explosive with and without Fernando Tatis Jr.
Right.
The only thing that sets them back is their pitching, but that's not the point. But the thing about it is I believe that Soto, he comes into the league, he's about 18, 19 years old, and the guy just explodes off the barrel from day one, wins a World Series. And I really think that he is the next one who could potentially get 700 home runs. He's had no major injuries up to this point. He just needed the team around him, and all these guys need the team around him to make it happen. And I believe he has that in San Diego.
Yeah, he's at 121 career home runs right now, and he's only 23 years old. So certainly a really good opportunity for him. This season, keeping in mind he has 23, his career high is 34. The thing is that even if he averages 34 for the next 10 years, that gives him 314. He's not even at 500 yet. And all of a sudden he's at 33 years old. So he's going to be one of those 45, 50 home run type of seasons like some of the greats that do have the 700 plus have had. And I don't know if he's that type of player, to be honest. I think he's more of a 320 hitter with a 470 on base percentage, which is unbelievable. Maybe a 27 to 33 home run type of hitter. That's probably what you're going to see from Soto on a consistent basis.
I think Soto's got pop, no doubt, but 50 home runs, I'm not so sure. He's probably only good for 35, maybe 40. So, we're probably looking at 500-ish home runs.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see that if he stays healthy. But yes, Albert Pujols, I think we're all pulling for him to get it. I think it would be an amazing story for Major League Baseball. No doubt about that. And speaking of Albert Pujols, Major League Baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals, they're currently not in the wild card race because they've been playing good baseball while the Milwaukee Brewers haven't been. But we are going to talk about this NL wild card race, the AL too, but we'll start in the NL. And right now it's basically a 3-team race for 2 spots, because although the Braves are a wild card team, they're way out in front.
Right.
I mean, the Braves are going to be the top wild card team, or they're going to be division champs, and the same thing goes for the Mets. One of those 2 teams up there. Then you got the Phillies and you got the Padres tied. Brewers hanging around 1.5 game back. I'm not even counting the San Francisco Giants at this point. They're 6.5 back. They're not even at 500. They were a pretender early on. They're still a pretender. Personally, I think the Brewers are pretenders too. The only difference for the Brewers is outside the Cardinals. We've talked about it many times on these shows, guys. Strength of schedule, Pirates, Cubs, Reds. Brewers beat up on those teams. They might have an opportunity to stick around in this race if the Padres or Phillies go on a skid. And for the Phillies, they got to get the Mets and they got to get the Braves, which is tough. Marlins, not a good team, but they're not necessarily an easy team to be. And we know Washington stinks. But looking at it, the Brewers do have an outside edge if they can get back into a wild card spot because of their schedule, but they're by far the worst of these three teams. What do you think, Eric?
I don't think they're going to make it. And number one, it's only really two guys in that lineup who are doing damage, Rowdy Tellez and Willie Adames. The rest of them, their offense is the Achilles heel of that team, the same problem as it was last year. Only difference now is their pitching is not ungodly like it was last year. Their bullpen isn't as good. Trading Josh Hader, I will say, was the right thing to do. I mean, as unpopular as it was, they had to do it. And so far, him losing his closer role, I think David Stearns deserves a little vindication there. I think that, because they don't have the bats, their bullpen is not nearly as good as it was last year. They've also had some injuries in the pitching department, and they had like an absolutely miserable June considering all the injuries. I really don't see them doing it. I can see the Padres, because the Padres, their offense will get them by. And then also, obviously, Joe Musgrove is a terrific arm. And Philadelphia, I think Philly just makes it just because the rest of the National League is bad. I think that's the only reason why they make it. But other than that bullpen is leaky. And they'll just make it just because, this is the worst example of tanking ever.
Yeah, the Phillies and the Padres, to me, are better than the Brewers. Don't get me wrong. I think the Brewers are the outside team here. Philadelphia, they did bring in David Robertson, who overall has had a good season, but nothing spectacular. Sir Anthony Dominguez has been good, but their bullpen certainly struggles. I like the move for Syndergaard. I mean, he's not the Syndergaard of old, but he's a nice number 3 behind Wheeler and Nola. They have a good lineup. They are getting Harper back. He started a rehab assignment. That's going to be a big boost for the Phillies. Remember, they've been playing most of the season without him. He's by far their best player. So that's a big boost for them. Obviously, Padres not getting Tatis back this year could hurt a little, but they're still way too talented not to be a playoff team. Brewers, I think, are the team that is on the outside looking in, and they continue to fall further and further behind the Cardinals. The Brewers were a team I liked at one point because I was like, okay, they're 2-3 games back of the Cardinals, 2 games back of the wild card. They have multiple ways of getting in. I don't think so anymore.
I don't see it with the Phillies, no doubt, they got an explosive offense. I think they'll get in. I think the Padres will get in because they have just enough pitching to get them in. I just think that the Brewers, it's just their offense is the problem. Their starting pitching hasn't been, Woodruff has been great down the stretch, and Freddie seems to be coming around, but Freddie's been out for a lot of the year. And also Corbin Burns is Corbin Burns. Yeah, they have the starting pitching, but their bullpen is not what it used to be. It's not nearly as deep. They have guys who are hurt. And offensively, you're paying $33 million for a leadoff hitter.
Yeah, and you're not even getting that much quality out of him anymore either. So
all he has to show for it again is single-digit home runs.
Yeah, that's looking like a bad contract for them with Christian Yelich. That's for sure. The American League wild card is a lot.
Well, here let me add a little something to what you guys have on this one, okay? Because I'm intrigued by everything that each of you guys have said. The Brewers, that Hader trade was a bold move that I think sent more vibes to the clubhouse, wondering what kind of signals that you were sending. Now, albeit I think the Brewers' return on it appeared to be okay, although one of the players got picked up by Colorado, as I understand it.
He was DFA'd, Denelson
right.
Lamet.
So he got picked up there. So it's an interesting move. The only thing I'll say this, and I think you guys are right, I don't think the Brewers are going to get in, but don't sell Craig Counsell short. Don't. He's a good, underrated manager. Andrew McCutchen's not bad, but I think you're right. And the one thing we can't lose sight is the fact that the Philadelphia Phillies, Lou and Eric, made that bold move by firing Joe Girardi for an interim guy who may have a chance to get the job full time. We'll see what happens. So if I were a betting man, I'm with you guys 100% that I do believe that Philadelphia, San Diego get in. And of course, like you mentioned before, Atlanta, nobody's touching them. And again, the Giants, to me, they're done. So,
I don't even consider the Giants.
Right? No, but they're mathematically in it, so it's not like you can disregard it. But I agree with you; they're not getting in. But the Brewers intrigue me, and the only reason why they do is because of the strength of schedule, and that's it. Other than that, that's probably where my lack of optimism towards Milwaukee isn't good. But, again, so let me ask you a question, Lou, okay? Obviously you talk about fantasy baseball, you got people. When you make a large trade at the trade deadline, and we know how the Hader thing has worked, where he's already been removed from his closer role, and Bob Melvin is, giving a little break to do it. But what kind of messages or signals does it send to you as a clubhouse and an organization on the team?
For which side? Are you talking for the Padres side?
No, actually, in this particular case, I'm talking about the Brewers making the bold move to get rid of a popular guy like Josh.
Well, of course, it hurts a little bit. I remember Seattle, it was either last year, I think it was last year, Seattle was kind of in an uproar when they traded Kendall Graveman, who was one of their best relievers at the time, and they ended up barely missing the playoffs. So I could see why the Brewers clubhouse would be a little disappointed, but they also have to keep in mind they're a small market team that operates like a small market team, and they weren't going to be able to pay Josh Hader, and they did a good job of getting a return that could help them still this year, but certainly in the future as well. So I think it was the right move. It was a surprising move for sure, and I did not see it coming, but it was definitely the right move at this point. Taking completely forget about the fact that Hader is not even pitching well right now. Even if Hader was pitching lights out, sub-2 ERA, just tons of strikeouts, racking up save after save after save, it would still be the right move overall for a team like the Brewers, because that's the type of baseball they have to play, and that's how they have to operate.
Well, you're right. You're right. It was a good baseball trade, Lou. But, remember, I live in Miami where they make a lot of these kind of moves here. And when I recently talked to Don Mattingly at a media availability against the Padres, he even admitted to me that, the MLB trade deadline is something that we take more serious here than most markets, more so because you have guys that you hate to see them get away. For example, Starling Marte got shipped to the A's, who went over to the Mets for, some prospects that aren't bad, but certainly not when you let Marte go. So, I just wanted to throw that at you. All right, Eric, and you can comment on this, and then Lou, take it over.
Here's the thing about it. Here's the thing about Hader had been on the block for a while.
Okay.
The Brewers were listening. Even during every offseason, it was like, is he going to come? Is he coming back, or is he not going to come back? As great as Hader was, the thing about it though is they got a pretty good return. They got Taylor Rogers out of the deal, who's a good closer in and of himself. Not Hader, but he's still a good closer in and of himself. Obviously, they have Devin Williams there, who was just having a lights out year as a setup guy. Obviously, and he can actually close a little bit. I wouldn't put him as a full-time closer, but I really believe if he really works at it in spring training, he could be that guy. But they have to remember, though, that Hader wasn't getting re-signed. They have to remember that this is the market that they're in. They're not New York. They're not Boston. They're not Chicago. And they just have to remember that. And that's something that clubhouse forgot, was to move on popular. Yes. And the difference with Philadelphia, though, when they fired their manager midseason, Joe Girardi, was that was favored by the clubhouse. They wanted that guy gone. They were probably rooting for him to be fired deep down. I know Bryce Harper has kind of snipped at him here and there in interviews, kind of a little passively, but we know it. But Bryce, we're not stupid, baby. We know what you're saying. But it's just, they have to remember, though, that Hader wasn't going to get re-signed. He also had another year of team control left, where if they were to wait another season for it, they wouldn't be getting as big of a return, because Hader would be a free agent at the end of the year. And so they don't want to make this. So the teams are not looking to make the same mistake that the Mets did when they traded their top prospect, Pete Crow Armstrong, for a half a tumultuous year of Javi Baez. So they have to keep that in mind. I mean, it just is. I mean, Milwaukee is probably I believe it's the smallest market in Major League Baseball. And that's just the way that the Brewers have to operate. They've got these small market teams. They have a window of opportunity to compete and potentially win a World Series. But also if they're not like the big market teams where they can just contend forever, like the Yankees, if they really want to. But the fact of the matter remains, these windows are only so big.
All right, I'm fine with that. Okay, that's good enough.
We see eye to eye on that one for sure, Eric. Definitely. So, as I was going to say, but we got had a lot more to say. I was going to move over to the American League, which is definitely a much tighter, more interesting, intense race for the wild card. Obviously, we have the Astros clear runaway in the AL West. Yankees We'll get to them in a little bit, but certainly still looking okay in the American League East division for now. Then we have a really tight central race between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Chicago. All those teams separated by 3 games, so anything's possible there, although Cleveland is the outside, or the front runner, I should say, with Minnesota and Chicago on the outside looking in. But then in the wild card, you have Toronto, you have Tampa, you have Seattle, and then right behind there, you have Cleveland just a game out, Baltimore 2.5 out, Minnesota 3 out, Chicago 4 out. And because you don't want to mathematically eliminate anyone, Scott, the Boston Red Sox 6 out.
Right.
Bye-bye to Boston, in my opinion. They don't have enough. They have too many injuries. Voldy just went back on the injured list. But after that, there looks like 6 teams separated by 4 games. And although it's Tampa and Toronto are clearly, and Seattle, those 3 teams are clearly the better of the 6 teams, anything is possible with this many games left, with a number of these teams playing against each other still. Tampa's going to play Toronto. Cleveland and Minnesota is going to play each other. Baltimore's going to play Tampa and Toronto. The only one that really has an easy go of it at this point should be Seattle, because I don't think they play the Astros again this season, and the rest of that division is not good. So Seattle, to me, is the clear favorite for a wild card spot, but I'd be very surprised if both Tampa and Toronto were not in the wild card spots as well. Over to you, Eric.
I mean, Seattle has a pretty easy way into the playoffs. They just have to kind of go through those series and get it done, and then boom, they're in. Boston, I as a Yankee fan, like even I'm going to go for this at the non-Yankee angle. They're not going to make it. Their pitching has not been there all year. Their bullpen has been garbage for a really long time. For some reason, Cham Bloom neglects it like one of Michael Vick's pit bulls, and they just can't. They just don't have the pitching to do it. They have the bats, which they just kind of had although they were thinking they had their trade deadline though really made no sense at all. You trade Christian Vasquez, okay, we're starting to shed here. Then you go ahead and go after Tommy Pham. I'm like, what are you doing? You essentially just replaced one similar bat for another similar bat, and then you go ahead and get a defensive catcher like Reese McGuire, who's not a hitting catcher. He's more.
Don't forget Eric Hosmer and his electrifying bat.
Although Eric Hosmer, though, they got lucky there because he didn't want to go to Washington. Which
I'm not sure how lucky they got though. Now they're on the chain there, or the ball, or whatever. I'm forgetting what I'm trying to say here, but they're on the hook. That's what it is. The ball, chain, the hook. I finally got it. They're on the hook for the contract, and it's not a friendly one.
They got some nice hitters on the farm. I know a couple.
Cassis is very good.
Yep, and I think Duran can be if he wants to, and
he has some trouble in center field though.
Yes, when he loses, and then
please go check out highlights of Duran in center field.
That fool needs to go run after. That fool, at the very least, he could have done was run after the ball.
Yeah,
and then it wouldn't have been an inside the park home run.
Let me add a few brief insights, and we do have some comments coming in from the chat room, just so I want to make you guys aware. Okay, number 1, the Baltimore Orioles are hanging around, and I said hanging around. Number 2, once upon a time, all of us thought that Scott Service was going to get fired. No. Okay. Number 3,
that was me, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean,
hey, listen,
they were playing so badly. It just made sense at the time.
It's a 162-game season. You're entitled to be wrong, okay, Lou? No big deal. I'm not giving you the wrong too. But Scott Service, we thought, would be fired. Toronto Blue Jays, they did fire their manager. And you know what? The Tampa Bay Rays always find a way to hang around. So as much as I got a little bit more involved with the National League side, I'm going to keep it a little brief and said keep it simple, stupid, short, whatever. So the Baltimore Orioles are hanging around. Scott Service is very serviceable. The Tampa Bay Rays and Kevin Cash are cashing in on my confidence. Yes, pun intended, caffeine included. And, of course, the Toronto Blue Jays, well, you never know. Their interim manager could be their permanent manager. So
yeah, I've heard good things in the Toronto media from people I know in Toronto as well, that Jays really like him. The players really like him. They buy into him. He has these defined roles in the bullpen for guys, and they just feel very confident with him. So I wouldn't be surprised about that either. Of course, they need to make the playoffs for him to have a chance to stick around after the Phillies, for Thompson to stick around.
So let's go to the chat room real quickly, guys, okay? Anthony
Amorosa, a good buddy of mine. He used to do some
well,
podcasts with him.
hey,
And he's a
listen, you know
Yankees
what?
hater, so
Who does he root
his
for?
comments were spot on.
Hey, that's okay. Hey,
Who does he
Anthony,
root for?
thanks for chiming
Boston
in.
and Houston.
Well, let me ask you, Anthony, how many games are they behind the Yankees?
Yeah,
And-
he doesn't care.
I mean,
Well, hey, you
That's
know
not
what?
going to affect him one bit.
I acknowledge everybody in the chat room, and that's all there is to it. So he says the Yankees the last month. Well, guess what? We still have a little bit of August left. So Anthony, okay, TBD on the Yankees. Although maybe that TBD isn't going to be very long because it's a good segue that Mr. Landers and Katz are going to talk about, and they'll let me know if they want my opinion at all. But go ahead, guys, take her away.
All right. So everyone knows that the Yankees have had a really tough month of August. Before their win on Sunday, they had the worst record, tied with the Marlins for the worst record of baseball in August. It was getting a little scary. Had they lost that game to the Jays, lead would have gone down to 6 games. The win put them at still an 8-game lead. That I guess they could, some saving grace for them. The lineup wasn't hitting. They weren't getting good pitching from Frankie Montas. Tyon wasn't very consistent. Cole hasn't been consistent. The bullpen is injured. Gone through a lot of issues. And look, I'm not an Aaron Boone fan, and you guys know that. I've said it many and many a times. I didn't think Aaron Boone was going to be fired this late into the season, but if the skid continued, something had to be done. And it had to be Aaron Boone or Brian Cashman. Something had to be done. Now, they've rectified it for now. They're about to go to Oakland and then Anaheim, both pretty weak teams. Maybe they can take 6 of 7, 6 of 8, whatever it is, and kind of completely rewrite the ship. Maybe they beat the Mets tonight, which would be big. Mets are playing good baseball. But they are not giving Yankees fans much confidence heading into September and potentially into October. And I think the biggest thing that hurts a lot of people is looking at what Jordan Montgomery has done. No one understood that trade. I understood the Montas one. I liked Efros. I liked Trevino. I liked the Benintendi one. All been good. Montas actually hasn't been so good. We'll see how he end up faring tonight. He's on the mound versus the Mets. I think if they're in the 4th inning right now. But the Jordan Montgomery trade made absolutely no sense at the time. He was their most consistent pitcher. Not their best, but their most consistent. They got Harrison Bader, who's not that great of a player. Good defensive player, sure. I think that Montgomery trade really messed with the clubhouse. He was a well-liked guy. And now look what he's done in St. Louis. The guy's 4-0 in 4 starts, allowed just 1 earned run. He's turned into their ace. So that was a mistake on Cashman's part. It could come back to bite them, especially because, again, Tyon not trustworthy, and Montas hasn't proven to be trustworthy. Domingo Germán's not pitching in the rotation in the playoffs anyway. Maybe Severino comes back. Stanton's on his way back. Maybe Bader comes back. They're certainly a good team, the Yankees, much better than they've been playing, but I do think that they needed that reality check, and I think the fans need that reality check. They're not the best team in the American League, and I said this on my show with Mark Mancini a couple weeks ago. If the season started August 1, this is before the Yankees went on this skid, I would hand the division to the Toronto Blue Jays. I think they're the better team.
Interesting.
I don't think Toronto's the better team because, number one, their starting pitching is not great. They do have some bats, but their pitching is a big, big problem. And although I will update you now, Mr. Landers, that Aaron Judge just homered.
48.
Yes, all rise for 48, and so things seem to be going okay right now. But the fact of the matter remains, the Yankees also had some injuries. Now, I'm not a big Boone fan, although sounding like replacing him, you're starting to sound like the old Steinbrenner, who will replace guys at the drop of a hat, including in the first week of the season. See Yogi Berra. And, but the fact of the matter, I think no matter what would have happened, I mean, the Yankees they haven't done that in a really long time, and they didn't do it in the last year of Torrey when people were talking about they were going to, but they didn't. But the fact of the matter remains, the Yankees had some injuries. You lose Stanton, your bullpen's getting ravaged by injuries, where it's become a closer by committee right now. And, that's just what happens. The grind of the year kind of got to them. They had like an insanely good first half, better than anybody could have expected, including the most optimistic of optimistic Yankee fans. And so you have to keep that in mind. The injuries definitely played a part. I mean, yes, a deep slump within their lineup. That was horrendous.
Yeah.
I mean,
Eric, I agree with you on the injuries, and you make good points, and they're all fair, and they're all valid, and they're all well said, and they're very educated. You obviously know what you're talking about, but everyone has injuries. Everyone deals with them. and the Yankees didn't deal with them the way that they were expected to.
Yep.
With the depth that they have, and they let a lot of games slip away that they probably shouldn't have, specifically in the bullpen. And I know the bullpen was injured. Obviously, Chapman hasn't been Chapman. Holmes kind of fell off a cliff. Hopefully, he'll be back rested and better starting next week. Obviously, they're still a good team, but looking at the potential playoff rotation, let's say they hold on to the division as they should. They get that by Cole, usually pretty good, but has not been that consistent. Garrett Cole in a short 5-game series, you can't have Garrett Cole giving up 5 runs in 3 innings, right? Nestor Cortez is the only guy I trust right now. Severino, who knows what he's going to be? He would be my number 3 right now. I don't trust Tyon, and you can't trust Montas for now. Now, Montas has 6 weeks or so to right the ship and potentially be a number 2 or 3 come playoff time. But you're not going to throw Herman out there either. So the rotation really scares me in October. Unlike a team like Tampa, who can piece it together, unlike Houston, who has great pitching. And I know you said Toronto's pitching's not that great starting-wise. Manoah and Gausman, 1-2, pretty trustworthy.
I mean,
it's good as the Yankees.
Yep, I wasn't going just by the Yankees' injuries. I mean, that was obviously the injuries played a factor in it, but they also went into a deep slump too. And
Every hitter was slumping. You don't see that usually. There's always 2-3 guys.
And they had the worst losing streak they had since 2000. Although they did win the World Series that year.
It happened in 96, I believe it was too. I saw a Derek Jeter interview with Joel Sherman.
96.
Where they had 2 really bad skids in August or early September, and everyone's like, "Oh, they're blowing the division. They held on and went on to win the World Series." So sure, hopefully history repeats itself. But there's definitely some issues, and those teams had Pettit and Cone and Wells and eventually Roger Clemens in 2000, El Duque in 2000. So
Mariano, Wetland.
Exactly. There's a lot more reliability than Garrett Cole, Nestor Cortez, and Luis Severino.
I mean, yes, for sure. They had they did have a bevy of players who could do that. But yes, they're they also hitting wise, I mean, that was just unacceptable. I mean, that just shouldn't have happened. I mean, you got a deep lineup like that. Also trading Montgomery, it made no sense. I know that they were trying to do it because with the idea that they were going to get Pablo Lopez. Didn't happen. You trade the guys after you get them. I mean, Montgomery hadn't been great. I will give him that. He hadn't been great.
Well, that was Scott's friend. What's her name? Scott, the general manager for the Marlins.
Okay, man. Let me point out.
She backed out of the deal at 5:55 Eastern. There's supposed to be a 3-way trade involving Montgomery, Hicks, Glaber, Bader, and Pablo Lopez, and a couple other lesser names.
Would Derek Jeter
Let me point out some folks, okay? I want you to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, by the way. I want to make sure we get that out there 1 or 2 of these times here by going to youtube.com, hit South Florida Tribune as well, obviously, or you go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, and as well. So, but the audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Advertise, call 954-304-4941. And make sure we get that in there for you folks out there who are just joining us. So this is 108 Stitches of the South Florida Tribune. My name is Scott Morgenroth, along with Lou Landers and Eric Katz. We're talking baseball. And, of course, now my guys here are talking heavy on the Yankees. The only thing I'll say about the Yankees is they're lucky that they had a big lead in the division. Otherwise, who knows if they would have collapsed a little too. They had a little bit of room there to play with, and we'll see whether or not they can get it right over the next.
Well, they collapsed. They just didn't completely collapse.
Right.
They were in the midst of one.
They also were fortunate enough to catch the Blue Jays at a bad time too, because they too, what got lost in all this is they too tanked down the stretch, and that's why the Yankees were in the position that they were in.
Well, you lost 5 series in a row, for crying out loud. I mean, that's on
6, I believe.
Is it 6 now? All right, whatever.
6, and unless they win tonight, there'll be 7 series without winning a series.
Well, so there you go. So I guess I stopped counting after 5. So I'm glad that I have my crack expert out with Lou Landers elsewhere, getting me straight on that. But nevertheless, for the folks in New York, okay, if you're losing 6 series in a row, they panic, and they panic pretty quick regardless.
Yeah, and
100%.
again, I made a lot of posts, and a lot of people like to tell me I'm wrong. It's like their favorite thing to do. It's fine. I get it.
I like to tell you
hate
you're
on
wrong,
me all
Lou.
you want. Yeah, you do. But
Yeah.
you usually make very good points about it. Not everyone does. So I was saying, so something has to be done. There needs to be a change, and not because I thought it was going to happen, but because I thought it should happen. Because again, you can't necessarily blame the manager or the general manager when a slide like this happens, but you can't fire an entire team. You can't fire 26 guys.
No, you can't.
You can fire a manager. You can fire a general manager. And I'm a Brian Cashman fan. A lot of people don't like Brian Cashman because they think, oh, he has brought us a World Series since 2009. And the World Series he won before that was just piggybacking off his predecessor. So with that being said, could Brian Cashman be gone at the end of the year if the Yankees fail? Could Aaron Boone be gone at the end of the year if the Yankees fail? And when I say fail, don't win a pennant? Sure, one if not both. And if they were to go on and God forbid, please no, another 3-13 stretch, someone's going to have to go. I don't care if it's September 21st or September 22nd.
Lou.
If that lead gets down to 2 or 3 games or something in the division, see you later to somebody because something has to be done.
Lou, I want to make reference to Kim Ng if I can. Okay, number one,
I know that
I have a feeling why she did back out of that trade at the last minute. The last thing the Marlins want to do in this town here is feel like they're continuing to ship off big parts here. And I don't think that when you'll talk about the face of the franchise and the history of the franchise, she was ready to go down there because let's face it, the attendance is very bad anyhow. Nothing like some of the other markets here.
Yeah,
and
but they were doing exactly what we talked about, Scott. We talked about trading pitching for hitting. They were going to get Torres, Bader, and although I don't think he's very good, Aaron Hicks. That's a big upgrade offensively.
I agree, but the problem that you have here, though, is during the offseason, they added Avisel Garcia, who they thought was going to hit, and Jorge Soler, and Pablo.
Well, maybe they would hit if they had a little bit of protection.
Oh, I agree. Hey, I'm not really downplaying what you're saying.
And I can also say I'm glad that trade wasn't made because Pablo Lopez has a history of throwing really well for 110 innings and then falling off a cliff at the end of the season. And he's been real bad lately. So that trade wouldn't have worked out either. Probably worse than the Montas one has worked out. So I'm fine with that. My issue was trading Montgomery to begin with.
Right.
You could have traded if you're just going to trade with St. Louis. They needed pitching. Trade Tyon, who's coming to the end of his deal. I mean, St. Louis could have benefited from Tyon too. The mistake was trading Montgomery, who's a good pitcher who has another year of control. And you know what their reasoning was, Eric? They're saving a few $1 million. This is the New York Yankees, man. Right. What are you worried about saving $3 million for?
You're starting to sound like Wayne Huizenga there.
Oh, please don't bring that name here down here when it comes to fire sales.
But I will say though, my biggest problem with the trade was they didn't have a backup plan. They didn't have a plan for what they were trying to do. That was my big trouble with it. If they would have had somebody else come in and they would have been that person to replace Montgomery in the lineup, fine, trade. I mean, if it either works out or it doesn't. I have no problem with that. My big issue was they didn't have they didn't have a plan. That was my only thing. And it was just a pretty big gaffe on Brian Cashman's part. As far as Aaron Boone leaving, I know the Yankees were nibbling on it last year after the disaster and
then they gave him 4 years.
Which, they were nibbling at it. But I mean, Cashman has been there a long time. We haven't won it since 2009. I mean, you have to at least consider, and we haven't won a pennant during that time since then. So the Yankees have to at least be considering their options because there's plenty of young candidates out there. I know. Imagine I don't know about David Stern's deal in Milwaukee, but I know the Mets were trying to get him for a long time to where Mark Antanasio was shutting the door every day on their face. And but I mean, there's plenty of guys out there who I think would be great for the job. Now, I think that, it could be argued that Cashman just, he's had a great run, but I think it's just time for a new voice in that clubhouse. Although I will say the Jeter this is off topic, Lou, but I will say in the Jeter documentary, it looked odd not seeing Brian Cashman bald.
Well, Lou, I
Yeah,
want to go. I
right.
want
It
to go
definitely
back to.
did. I want. Hold on, Scott. Sorry, I just want to say
That's
one
okay.
thing.
I just want to go back to one point while it's fresh in my head.
Go
I
for it.
think you're 100% right about the Montgomery trade. That was a bad look, and we all knew it from the begin with. But anytime you try to make up for a mistake that you make, there's always that real fine line. When it comes to making a trade. Oops, we made a mistake. We got to get this guy. And
Well, they did it with 4 minutes left to the deadline, so they didn't even have time to make up for it.
Well, that's true.
And they don't have the waiver deadline this year, so
yeah, well, that's true. But when you think in the mind of a general manager, and I love what you do, Lou. Everything that I see on social media, what you do impresses the daylights out of me. But when you're trying to gauge trades about what went through, what shouldn't have gone through, you know what? You might as well go out there and play craps on the craps table at Vegas, because it's all a crapshoot anyways when it comes to decision. So whether it's Pablo, Montgomery, it doesn't matter. Your points are well documented. And I'm just trying to show a little rationale about the Marlins' decision making. I'm probably doing a lousy job of it anyways, but I'm doing it anyway. So go on, continue.
So, yeah, a no general manager could be a good call. That doesn't mean Cashman has to leave the organization either. He's been there so long. Just move him to purely just like a front office overseeing things, but let someone else come in and start making moves. You don't have to cut ties with him completely if you don't want to. But I would start with the manager. And again, I don't think Aaron Boone's a bad guy. I think he's good with the media. I just don't think he's a good on the field manager. I don't think he has what it takes to get his guys pumped up. I don't think he has what it takes to bring them out of a slump. And my biggest wish for the Yankees this offseason is Don Mattingly.
Oh, God, I can't believe you said that. I swear to GMTA, guys. How do you hashtag GMTA when nobody knows what it is anyways, except me and you, right, Lou?
the Marlins are going to be dumb
Don
enough to let him
Mattingly.
go.
I was waiting for you, Landers, to mention it.
He wants out, I think, Mattingly.
Well, yeah, it's just
Miami.
He's on an expiring contract. And can you imagine if you give him any kind of talent to work with? Holy moly.
Yeah.
Or
he did it in LA.
Or what does Keith Jackson say? Oh, Nelly. I don't know how well I do my Keith Jackson. Oh, Nelly. Okay, Don Mattingly ends up with the Yankees. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that would be a nice move for sure. So let's move over to some other things that could happen in the offseason. Dansby Swanson, Atlanta Braves shortstop, world champion. Shortstop, Trey Turner for the Dodgers, world champion, not with the Dodgers, but world champion. So 2 world championship pedigrees, both going to become free agents unless they sign extensions. We also have 2 other guys who are world champion shortstops with opt-outs in their deals. That's Carlos Correa and Xander Bogart. So 4 World Series champion shortstops, all with tremendous bats. 3 of them with great gloves. Sorry, Xander, you're not a good defensive shortstop, but you're still a great player. Either way, we saw a great shortstop class this past season. This one might actually be better, certainly more top heavy. And it could change the landscape of the entire league with guys like this moving from place to place. I mean, imagine the Red Sox without Bogarts. That would be pretty crazy. Dansby Swanson, sure, the Braves have a lot of young talent, and they have a lot of them on really good deals. They could afford to give Dansby big-time money and not even come close to the luxury tax. Trey Turner, hard to imagine the Dodgers not wanting to bring him back, but you just don't know. I mean, sometimes they let some of their own go. They let Corey Seager go. I was surprised to see them let Corey Seager go. World Series hero for them. So that's interesting. And Correa, if the Twins even make the playoffs, I feel like Correa can find a better landing spot for more money in more years next season. So I see all 4 of these guys becoming free agents. Bogarts being the least likely, but still probably going. Eric, what do you think? Are all 4 of these guys hitting the open market, or any of them signing extensions, or Correa or Bogarts not opting out?
Oh, Bogarts is opting out. His agent, Scott Boras, he will see free agency. It's a given. Everybody who under Boras at least gets a sniff at free agency. Whether they sign extensions or not remains to be seen, but he's going to see free agency because they want to get the most dollars possible. But Correa is going to opt out. I mean, the Twins, they were a good surprise this year, but they weren't that.
The Twins are starting Aaron Sanchez tonight. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't be a playoff team when you're starting Aaron Sanchez and his 7.5 ERA and 1.7 WHIP coming into the game. You just can't.
Right. I mean, he's just not. I don't think that they've that they're going to be a playoff team. And Correa, I know Correa wants to win. Correa just signed there because of the money. That's the only reason why he went to Minnesota. And he's going to opt out. He's going to opt out because he wants to cash in again, and he wants to do it for even more. He more or less took a pillow contract. Again, his agent Scott Boras, they always opt out. Just ask Alex Rodriguez. And they so what they want to do is they need to have they want, Correa is going to want to cash in again. That's what these guys do. And, and that's just the way it is, because I think a majority of them are Boras clients. So they're going to see free agency.
The question is, where do these players fit if not with their current teams? I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that have money. They kind of have shortstops already, or they have players like Oswaldo Peraza and Anthony Volpe and don't want to sign those players because they want to be cheap. I'm talking to you, Yankees and Hal Steinbrenner. St. Louis Cardinals have this kid, Mason Wynn, in their minor league system who can play shortstop in a couple years. Do they want to dish out big bucks when they probably want to try and extend Nolan Arenado, keeping Paul Goldschmidt and those two guys together? The Dodgers, you expect if they lose Turner, they'll try to get one of these other guys. That's a given, sure. The Angels, what are they going to do? They're going to spend more money on offense to win 65 games and waste Ohtani and Trout? I mean, how many of these teams really out there have the money to go out there and spend on it, or don't have a shortstop already? The Blue Jays have money. They have Bo Bichette. I mean, the Mets have money. They have Francisco Lindor. So that's where I question it. These guys could opt out, but it might end up being a mistake because they might not get what they think they're going to get.
Well, Bogarts will opt out because he knows he can get more money than
he can for sure based on the deal he has.
And I think Dansby is going to be the hottest guy on the market. We know that and a lot of teams now favor player development, but I have a feeling that I could very well see it being that a team that's that will add an opt out again to those contracts. So pretty much they're holding a spot for that minor leaguer. At least they can be a little more some guy who's a star and competent, and they can add opt outs for it. And I mean, the players love opt outs because it means they can go cash in again.
Yeah, I could see Swanson ending up back in Atlanta though. I really could, because they have a lot of money, because they have guys like Albies and Acuna and Olsen and Grissom, and Michael Harris, these guys, Austin Riley, all on deals that they're way underpaid based on their talent, because they locked them up to these 8-10-year deals before they even hit arbitration, buy out all those arbitration years, and they're in a really good position financially. Morton's probably coming off the books, if I'm not mistaken either. They can offer Swanson big time money. Let's call it $175 million over 6-7 years, 25 to 30 million a year, and be just fine. So I think he could go back to Atlanta. I just don't know how many teams out there are willing to drop 30 plus million a year on some of these shortstops.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add to this whole shortstop conversation is I actually thought Carlos Correa would end up in Detroit with a reunion with AJ Hinch, and they opted to go Javier Baez. As for the other three, I mean, you have the Houston connection. The other three, I don't have a comment, because I think you guys have done a good job with the other three. So,
well, theoretically speaking, he could go to Detroit and they can move Baez to second base.
That's true. Yeah, Jonathan Scope, I think is their existing second baseman. So if the Tigers are willing to spend money, and here's the X factor, okay, Al Avila is no longer the general manager, so you don't know who they're going to bring in. They got a head start on that search. I know you were not here.
Well, remember, Cleveland's a team of, not that they necessarily need the shortstop because they have a decent one in Rosario, but they don't spend money either. The Royals aren't going to step up and spend money. The White Sox have Tim Anderson. Texas just signed 2 shortstops, moved one of them, kept one of them at second base in Semien. They have Josh Jung coming up, who's one of their top prospects. Seattle could use a shortstop. Seattle would make sense. JP Crawford's not that good. And they just traded Noel V. Marte to get Castillo, and he was their up-and-coming shortstop. So a guy like Swanson, Correa, Bogarts, I could see going to Seattle. I think Trey Turner is going to demand more than all those guys personally. So Seattle would make sense. They're one of the teams that's clearly willing to spend some money that could also use a shortstop. But other than that, I don't see it.
But Lou, you make a good point. Seattle has not been shy about spending money in the past. So I think what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. Remember, once upon a time, didn't they invest in Robinson Cano? Didn't he go
They
out there?
certainly did. They just
Yeah.
invested in Robbie Ray as well.
Right. So they're not afraid to open their checkbook, Lou. You're right. I mean, so don't count out Seattle spending money. Of course, I wouldn't count them out. Lou, you're 100% right.
Build on the core that you have. You have some good young talent. You got a good pitching staff right now. And that's probably their weakest position offensively too, is either second or shortstop.
Don't forget about Washington, because they need like everything right now. I know that the Lerners are getting ready to sell the team, but who knows what the next owners are going to do, and maybe try and start to put a viable core in place. I'm sure if Riley gets himself a nice large contract like his teammates are, that it means, I'm sure he'll take it. I know that Dansby Swanson, which, I can very well see Washington doing that. I don't know who the new ownership's going to be. And obviously the Angels are getting ready to go for sale here too, because the Marinos have had enough. And I can see them opening too. We've seen the
Angels will spend money on a shortstop and still again win 65 games and waste Trout and Ohtani.
But yeah, there's a couple places that they can go. I don't see Bogarts going back to Boston. I really don't. I really think Boston's about to let JD Martinez go and Bogarts. And also,
what I have heard, guys, Baltimore Orioles willing to spend money.
Oh, they got money. They're ready to do it now. They got their core in place. They have their talent, and Trey Mancini's off the books. They have the money, and they are going to spend it, because that team is looking to contend next year.
Carlos Correa would be such a perfect fit there. A guy that's won before, coming in with a young core of talent. I think he would fit so nicely in Baltimore. As would Bogart if he wants to stay in the American League, in the American League East. Baltimore is definitely an interesting one. I do like Mateo. He's a good young player, but he could move to second base where they have Rougned Odor. So let's be real. They could use the upgrade.
I think look for this offseason. One of the shortstops ends up in Baltimore, because they want the bat. And I know that Baltimore is definitely going to go after some pitching, because now with their little Bob the Builder ballpark, they're wanting to attract some better arms, because pitching and also obviously with Grayson Rodriguez about to come up, I'm sure they're going to want a true ace around him.
They called up DL Hall too, who has some potential. They've liked him for a while.
They're going to put
kind of sitting there.
They're going to want to put one guy. They're going to want to put a veteran in there, so that way he doesn't become like Hunter Green, having to do it all himself.
Yeah, remember though, when the Orioles at one point they brought up Britton, Mattis, Gausman, and Bundy. None of them worked in Baltimore. Now, of course, it's a different ballpark and a different era. But I remember when Baltimore had this unbelievable, nonstop, incredible young pitching all coming up through the system, and they all failed in Baltimore. Bundy still stinks. Gausman's good. And didn't they have Jake Arrieta too? They sure did.
They did.
He wasn't very good there. Good. Yeah. So, Britton became.
Although Britton ended up being a good closer.
Yeah,
Britton ended up being a great closer.
So we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, they're an interesting. Baltimore and Seattle could be some dark horses for these guys, but there's still four of them and only a few teams. You got to think the Dodgers are going to get somebody, one of these four, if they don't bring back Turner. But I mean, the Dodgers can afford to throw an 8-year, $40 million per year contract to Turner before he hits free agency and bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
Anything on this, Scott?
Yeah, for all we know, they could bring in Darby Swanson to rejoin Freddie Freeman, right? Have a couple of Braves connections. You never know.
I think
I've seen crazier things happen. Hey, if one guy's homesick, bring his buddy over. No big deal. Well, I'll show you everything you need to do on the LA Freeway.
I can see Trey Turner going back to the Dodgers. The Dodgers are willing to spend the money.
I'm kidding with you, Eric. Come on, you got to know when I'm kidding here. By the way, we do have another comment in the chat room that goes by the name of Drunk. Okay, names are what they are. It's not like we're named at birth certificates, all that. So any comments that we get, we're very appreciative. And you know what?
Show me your government-issued ID so I can see your real name.
I hear you. Well, anyway,
like it's McLovin.
But you know what, though? She does have your she is one of the GMTAs here when we titled this broadcast. Drunk says, "Go Cards, Pujols 700." So, what can I tell you? That's a theme where we really built this premise of what we're talking about. So we know somebody paying attention. And Drunk, have a margarita or strawberry margarita on me. I don't care, but those are good, timely comments nevertheless. So I don't know, hey, Eric, you got to learn one of these days. And I'm really kidding around here about the two Atlanta guys going to LA and all. Come on, man. I know you guys are serious and you're knowledgeable. I don't ever downplay the significance of that. But when it comes to free agency, anything can happen.
Like they go in places that we never suspected that they would go.
Yeah, but Landers, you're really on point though with the Seattle stuff. Though I could see Carlos Correa end up going out to Seattle. And here's the thing that we can't lose sight of about Seattle: they're desperate to win. How long has it been since they've been in the playoffs? Like 20-some years. When
2001.
Right. So they're not afraid to go ahead and spend a little jingle in those bells there. So I wouldn't rule them out. In fact, we've got a lot of dark horses on tonight's show when you think about it, right? We talk about Scott Service, who nearly that we predicted could get fired. Charlie Montoya did get fired. And then we're circling back, and the Baltimore Orioles are not going to lose 100 games for the first time in who knows how long. So, there's a lot of interesting things. And the big thing that we all have to understand is this is a 162-game marathon. It really is. And unlike a pandemic year where you only have a 60-game sprint, baseball is the one sport of any of them that you know what the true team is. And I don't think there's any such thing as an upset in baseball. I really don't. When you get to the postseason and you've gotten through the grind of spring training, regular season to the several tiers of playoffs. So you guys are welcome to agree or disagree with me. But Lou, I got to tell you, when you put these shows together, to me, I look at it as like the night off. I can feed off of your stuff because you're that knowledgeable of what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And I do want to remind everyone to subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. You can visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South, and you can advertise by calling a 954-304-4941. Audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcast from. So wanted to leave you all with that before I turn it over to Scott. Scott, take us out of here, man.
I will, but you know what? We started off on a very interesting note with the Oakland A's attendance or lack thereof. So I want to let everybody know that if you're a subscriber, great. If you're not, I'll give you another reason why you should. I'm releasing a video from Oneonta, New York. And Oneonta, New York, obviously used to be in the New York Penn League where you had the Oneonta Tigers and the Yankees. And it's called Dutch Damashki Stadium. And I talked about Don Mattingly because the road to obviously the New York Penn League to the majors is a lot longer because of the short season approach. And that particular capacity was 4,500. And you know what? When we talk about the A's attendance last night against the Miami Marlins, they would have had over 50% full there. So, but it was a fun video to go back to. New York Penn baseball never got in the stadium. I believe the Oneonta Outlaws are a collegiate team that plays there now. We missed them by a couple of weeks when we were on our trip to Cooperstown. But, the New York Penn League produced a lot of good players. And for a lot of folks that are looking at minor league ball, professional baseball, the Tigers and the Yankees played there for a long time and bred prospects. So we had the opportunity, Lou, and I think I mentioned this before, is that when we were in New York City, we ended up doing 12 videos, including the New York City, in addition to 2 shows along with Mark Mancini's show. And there's another one on the way about a pedicab driver. So it was a working vacation, but a very rewarding one with all the different types of people we met and a couple spontaneous shows that worked out. But you know what, though? I had a lot of fun with the Oneonta one because, let's face the reality. If you can really think that Oneonta to Cooperstown is a 15, 20-minute drive car-wise, okay, but the long journey from New York Penn League, short Class A to the Hall of Fame is a whole lot longer, and it's a whole lot tougher to get in. That's what made this video so enjoyable to produce. So, if I'm going to satirize the Oakland A's attendance issues, which we know the inevitability is going to be, they're going to go to Vegas when they get the thing. We might as well cap it off with that video that will be released any day or so. So, folks, please look for it. But, hey, I can't tell you right now that I have 2 great teammates here with Eric Katz and Lou Landers. Rick Curdy will be back probably pretty soon. But you guys, to me, are you guys are the fountain of youth for me, and I just enjoy how you guys can get an old 60-year-old man's energy cranking here on certain things where I'm chomping at the bit to get a word in, even if I was on the show in pre-production. I wanted to talk about it, but when you get my wheels turning, okay, or whatever, or
I have something quick I just want to throw at you guys.
sure.
So if you had to guess in AL and NL interleague play, what would you think? Who would you think is the better team?
God, you know what? Houston
Or the better league, I should say.
You know, the one thing I didn't have a chance to mention in the Yankees comments is
just this season. I'm not talking about forever. Just this season.
I like the Houston Astros.
The Houston Astros. No, I'm talking about in interleague play.
Okay.
The AL and the NL have played, looks like 234 games so far this year against one another. Which league do you think has more wins against the other?
I got to go American League.
Because the American League has a lot better teams, right?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the National League who has the better record. They're 120 to 114, and very close. They have 1,004 runs to 990 runs. So,
all right, so
I thought that was kind of cool because we're seeing more interleague play than ever before. It'd be interesting, and the American League always dominates the All-Star game, it would seem. So I thought it would be interesting. If I had to guess, I would have said the AL, and I thought you guys would too.
All right, so meanwhile, now Lou Landers just changed his name to Sneaky Hembo and Get Up, right? So you can go out there and throw a guy like off me. Okay, I'll that'll Sneaky Hembo. Okay, I look bad. Lou Landers got me. That's okay. But you're right about the All-Star game. Good stuff, though, Lou. I love these curveballs. Of course, that's an appropriate term for this show, right?
Yeah.
Lou throws the curve. That could be the next week's title.
Right, and I swung and missed on that one, and I don't mind even mentioning it that way. I could care less. Good stuff, though. So with that
what
said,
else we got here, guys?
Well, with that said,
anything else fun? Eric, Giancarlo Stanton expected to be activated for Thursday.
Yes, he's going to be in Oakland. So that should be good for them.
That's all we got, I think, Scott. Can I tell everyone where they could find me and check out all my work?
Absolutely.
All right. So Lou Landers, at Landers Talks on Twitter, Lou Landers Facebook, MLB and fantasy baseball content director at drroto.com, SiriusXM, Sports Byline USA, Armed Forces Network, tons of different podcasts. You can find them. Just search my name in iTunes or Spotify and they'll all come up. And that's really about it for me. Of course, you can find me on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk Tuesday nights, turning it over to Eric to let everyone know where they can find him and all the awesome stuff he does.
You can find me on Twitter at Sports Team News, and you can follow my work on bellyupsports.com.
And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version because Lou did a tremendous job giving it to everybody when he read it off. As far as I'm concerned, go to www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow me on Twitter at Tribune South. And more importantly, folks, please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel because we have a lot of versatile programming from sports and non-sports related shows. And I know that everybody can gain a benefit one way or the other. So I cannot be more blessed to have a supporting cast here on the network than I am with everybody that I'm involved with. And I'm very thankful with every show that we do, that we not only have fun, but we want to make sure everybody's informed and entertained. So, Lou, to me, you're A1 in my book, okay? And Eric, you are incredible as well, and as well as everybody else that's involved. So, meanwhile, great show tonight, a lot of information here. And you know what? Our goal, as Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wolon would say on Pardon the Interruptions, we'll see if we can do better the next time. So, with that said, on behalf of Lou Landers and Eric Katz, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We will catch you next Tuesday. Have a good night. Be safe. And, folks, please remember, COVID's out there. We don't want you to get sick. So we hope you can join us next week. And for those of you that did join us, thank you very much. Good night, everybody.